Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's Fireside Chat with our special guest, Mellody Hobson. My name is Donna Edwards-Rogers. I'm the director of the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing here in the College of Business Administration at the University of Detroit Mercy, your sponsor for today's webinar. We're excited and pleased to have Mellody join us as the inaugural speaker for the Center's annual Speaker Series. Our desire was to set the benchmark high for successive speakers. We think we've done that in what we believe will be a far-reaching and meaningful discussion with this accomplished business leader, board member, educator, activist, and philanthropist. If you tuned in earlier, you had a chance to learn a little about Detroit Mercy, located in the heart of Detroit, Michigan, and get a glimpse of the tremendous impact a Detroit Mercy education has on its students. Before our chat with Mellody begins, I'd like to share a little about the Charlton Center and the critical role we believe is ours to play in the financial services industry. As a way of background, we are one of 3 centers of excellence in the College of Business Administration. Our role is to promote academic excellence and provide hands-on training to students pursuing careers in the investment and investment-related financial services industry. We're a Catholic institution, and uniquely, within the framework of our Jesuit and Mercy values, the Charlton Center responds to the need for a greater understanding and appreciation of ethics and socially responsible investment choices among investment professionals. As we speak with Mellody, you'll learn of her company, Ariel Investments, LLC's long history of responsible investing in the environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, arena. An important focus of the center, and one dear to my heart, is to increase the number of Black, brown, and females in this industry, thereby providing a resource of qualified, talented professionals whose participation in this sector will help to reverse a long-term trend of underrepresentation. We'll also discuss the ramifications and importance of this effort later in our chat with Mellody. The Charlton Center for Responsible Investing is made possible through the generous award of alumnus Richard M. Charlton, class of '65. Dick is a successful entrepreneur and investor who founded and now serves as Chairman Emeritus of New England Pension Consultants, now known as NPC, a leader in the investment industry. We've asked Dick to join us and briefly share with you, in his own words, his reasons for founding and funding this great venture and his expectations for its future. Dick?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Donna. And thank you for having me, and greetings from a 1965 engineering grad. I can't think of anyone better than Mellody to kick off the 2022 Speaker Series at the Charlton Center. And Mellody, thank you for joining us today. I take great pride in the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing. It reflects my strong belief that the University of Detroit Mercy and the City of Detroit house immense, diverse talent, ready to take its rightful place on the world stage, given the opportunity. I saw this talent while living in the city proper for 15 years and reaffirmed it when recruiting management employees for Michigan Bell, the company I joined after my graduation. I was in a fast-track program that took me to management employment after a few assignments, and there my boss and I were charged to recruit new employees into the firm. We began by comparing the demographics of our management complement to those of the public that we served. And guess what? We didn't look at all like our constituency. We set out to close this gap and ultimately hired more African American and women in percentage and absolute terms than any other Bell System operating company. And to give you an idea of the size, the pension funds alone of the Bell System at that time would have constituted the 8th largest country in the world. It's a big company. It took a lot of work and persuasion, as the company had not previously targeted diversity in its recruiting efforts, and the kids in the neighborhood knew that. So we went to the neighborhoods themselves. We knocked on doors and worked with guidance counselors and parents to get graduates to come to our interviews. Looking back, I can say with pride that the talent that we identified and recruited was wonderfully competitive, with many moving over time into executive positions at Michigan Bell and Ameritech, the successor company, including Bob Hurst, the only African American ever to become the president of a Bell System operating company. Similarly, when I founded NEPC, I sought out diverse professionals to add to our growing staff, and I prioritized the opening of a Detroit office. I'm pleased that several of our early partners were women, and that Doris Ewing became the first minority partner of any non-minority owned consulting firm in the industry. We continue to emphasize diversity in the workplace, including minorities, women, and LGBTQ plus individuals, and offer our clients access to deeper resource pool by explicitly reaching out to minority and female-owned investment managers. Now more than ever, there's an increasing sensitivity in the industry of the need to raise the presence of these firms. Bella Research and the Knight Foundation have found that little over 1% of the $70 trillion in assets in the United States investment management industry is managed by minority and women-owned business enterprise firms, MWBE. But the public and private sectors are realizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, and they are beginning to champion change in the workplace. And I'm confident that the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing will do its part. The center's mission is to promote diversity in the investment profession, promote sustainable and responsible investment practices, and facilitate educational and professional opportunities for its students. The center combines my passion for investing with the Catholic values and ethics instilled in me during my years at Detroit Mercy and my love for the city of Detroit. As the city continues to reclaim its former glory, the Charlton Center will facilitate that rebound with offerings of educational employment opportunities in the financial services and investment industry, including the speaker series that we kick off today, hands-on investment management, internship, seed capital for local community ventures, support for the CFA and CAIA designations, and its emphasis on opening additional doors of opportunity to MWBE-owned firms. It's immensely gratifying to me to see the Charlton Center in such capable hands, receiving support from the uber-talented Mellody Hobson. I wish all of you every success, and I thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Dick, for your demonstrated commitment to the center's mission. If you've joined today's webinar and were appreciative of the students, faculty, investment professionals, corporate heads, investors, interested public, you may already know of the personal and professional accomplishments of today's guest. But in case you don't, I've asked the Dean of the College of Business, Joe Eisenhower, to formally introduce Mellody to you. Joe earned a bachelor's degree from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania and a doctorate in economics from the State University of New York before returning to Penn for his postdoctoral studies. After working in banking for several years, he embarked on an academic career. A recent study found him to be the world's most widely cited scholar in the field of risk and insurance management over the past quarter century. As Dean of Detroit Mercy's College of Business Administration, he's garnered national rankings for the college and founded 3 centers of excellence, including the Center for Social Entrepreneurship, the Center for Practice and Research in Management and Ethics, and of course, the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing. He also serves as president of the Jesuit Business Deans and founder of the Mercy Business Leadership Conference. Dean Eisenhower will now formally introduce you to our phenomenal guest, Mellody Hobson. Following his introduction, our fireside chat will begin. Dean Eisenhower.
Thank you, Donna. And thank you, Dick, for your generosity and vision, which have allowed us to launch the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing and its speaker series. It's certainly an honor for me to introduce our inaugural presenter in this series, Mellody Hobson. Our audience will be glad to know that Ms. Hobson received a Jesuit education early on at the St. Ignatius College Prep School in Chicago, after which she graduated from Princeton University's School of Public and International Affairs. And students take special note of this. After serving as a college intern at Ariel Investments, one of the largest African-American owned money management firms in the nation, Ms. Hobson rose through the ranks all the way from intern to her current position as president and co-chief executive officer. In that capacity, she is responsible for all firm-wide management, including strategic planning and growth. She oversees the company's publicly traded mutual funds and is co-founder of Ariel Alternatives, the firm's private equity subsidiary as well. She also serves as a spokesperson for the Ariel Black Investor Survey, which examines investing patterns among minorities. In addition, she serves as chair of the board of directors at Starbucks Corporation and as a director of JP Morgan Chase. She previously served as chair of DreamWorks Animation and was a long-standing board member of the Estee Lauder Companies. Ms. Hobson is vice chair of World Business Chicago, and in 2017, she became the first African-American woman to head the Economic Club of Chicago. She's also co-chair of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art and a board member of the George Lucas Educational Foundation and Bloomberg Philanthropies. She served on the boards of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Rockefeller Foundation, Sundance Institute, and the executive committee of the Investment Company Institute. Mellody Hobson is a nationally recognized champion of financial literacy and investor education. She's frequently featured in business publications such as Barron's. She's been a regular contributor on finance and economic trends for CBS News, a weekly guest on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and a columnist for Black Enterprise magazine. She's been recognized on numerous rosters of prominent executives, including Ebony's 20 Leaders of the Future, Time Magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world, and its 25 most influential business people, the World Economic Forum's Global Leaders of Tomorrow, Esquire's list of America's best and brightest, and the Wall Street Journal's 50 Women to Watch. The Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and the Horatio Alger Association of Distinguished Americans have presented her with awards. She's a recipient of honorary doctorates from Howard University, Johns Hopkins, St. Mary's College, and the University of Southern California, as well as Princeton University's highest honor, the Woodrow Wilson Award. And as a tribute to her leadership and generosity, Princeton is currently replacing its oldest residential college, previously named for President Wilson, with a new Hobson College, the first such institution to be named for an African-American woman. So we're delighted to have Mellody Hobson join us as the inaugural speaker at Detroit Mercy's Charlton Center. Thank you very much for this, Mellody. And thanks also to our mutual friend, Ben Cotton, for helping to arrange the virtual fireside chat. I'll now turn this back over to our Charlton Center Director, Donna Edwards-Rogers.
We are so excited to have you here and being a part of the Charlton Center for Responsibility's first speaker series. We're so honored to have you join us, and our audience is very broad-based. We have not only students, we have alumni, we have investment professionals, we have corporate heads, not only Detroit, but across the country. So because we have all of these people excited to hear from you, let's get started. Now, you've spoken a lot about your professional journey as one who began as an intern and ended up as co-CEO of Ariel Investments, LLC, the first African-American investment company in the United States, now with assets of over $17 billion. You've also spoken personally of your mother's character building influence. Would you share some of these insights with our audience?
Okay, well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. And certainly, since my technology was a little late, please feel free to go over a bit. I want to thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to this audience. And Dick Charlton is someone that I've known my entire career. So I am excited to be the inaugural speaker in his series. He's so well respected in the investment industry, as well as the firm that he has built. My story is, you've given a little bit of it. I've worked at Ariel my entire career. So this is my 31st year at Ariel. It's a staggering thought. I've had one job since I graduated from Princeton, supposedly the only person from my graduating class out of 1,100 people who's had the same work and phone number since I graduated. And so that gives you a sense of, I'm one for loyalty. I'm one to stick to it. But that really comes out of my upbringing. A lot of what I experienced is so similar to so many people. My story is not unique. It's one of perseverance and grit, where I grew up the youngest of 6 kids. My mom was a single mom. We had, often difficult existence in terms of making ends meet, which led us to be at times evicted or our phone disconnected or lights turned off. That was just a normal part of my life. And growing up, our cars getting repossessed or us hiding them so they didn't get repossessed. But my mother was always very, very clear about the fact that she felt that I could be or do anything. She always had a caveat to it, though. She wanted no excuses from me of anything that I felt was an injustice that was coming at me. She told me to expect it. And so she armed me for the world that I was going to live in as a Black person, as a woman, not necessarily in terms of the halls that I work in today and the corporate life that I have, but really making sure that I could be resilient in the face of obstacles. And I really do appreciate her for doing that. So simultaneously telling me anything was possible, simultaneously telling me there were no excuses for any shortcomings or shortfalls that I might have, and simultaneously telling me, arm yourself and expect a lot that will go against you. So as a result of that, on my Instagram and Twitter pages, I call myself a happy warrior. So I feel like I have to be a warrior, but I want to be happy about it.
All right. Well, it sounds like that was great advice that you got, and it has served you well. One of the things that we do at the Charlton Center is, with our emphasis on socially responsible investing, we have a great interest in the environmental, social, and governance issues. In November of last year, you were profiled in an interview with Barron's that highlighted your company's early adoption of these ESG values. How do you take these values into consideration, and how does it influence the investment decisions that Ariel makes?
Well, I'll start off by saying this isn't something that's new for us, and that's what I underscored in that Barron's story. I think lately, this whole concept of ESG has become hot and maybe perceived as a trend, but we've been doing it almost since I started it, before I started at Ariel, with the introduction of our mutual fund as a public mutual fund back in 1986. Our partner at the time was the Calvert Group, but even before that, when Ariel started, our first client was Howard University in 1983, and they asked us to run a South Africa free portfolio. In keeping with the times where on college campuses, there was a lot of consternation about the apartheid movement and what was happening in South Africa. And so we managed that South Africa free portfolio. We thought that was only appropriate as the first minority owned investment management firm in the United States and mutual fund company. And then we extended some of those social screens to the portfolios. And we did that specifically when our public mutual fund was started. So we started to incorporate a look at the environment and make sure that we were avoiding environmental polluters. We weeded out tobacco. We did not want that in our domestic equity portfolios because we felt the litigation risk. We were not going to make a moral statement about smoking, but we did not think it was a good investment in terms of the outstanding litigation that was there. And then we made sure also to incorporate some of the things that are inherent to the DNA of Ariel around diversity, equity, and inclusion, asking boards about the diversity of their boards and really leaning into them to make sure that they weren't just giving lip service to us as large shareholders on this issue. So jumping to today, we can point to over 50 companies that added diverse board members as a result of our urging, which we ultimately believe on all of these things, these make these businesses better businesses. And so this is not about our a moral code that we have, which we want people to understand diversity is very important, but at the very bottom line, we want them to understand it's important to their survival to the extent that they will be able to understand the goals, the needs of their customers, and also to the extent that a diverse group of people around a table generally lead to better problem solving and better outcomes. Not polluting your environment leads to better communities and a better world, which sustains the world longer, therefore sustains you, your company longer. Not killing your customer. You know, all of these things are things that we thought about as related to those ESG practices that we have. Now, all of the portfolio managers in the firm don't apply them the same way, but that's how we started.
Speaking of the success that you've had in that area, last November, Schwab Asset Management, the arm of Charles Schwab, announced a new product, the Schwab Ariel ESG EFT, which will be trading or has perhaps begun trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Why is that role of Ariel as co-advisor of this product? Why is that significant?
Well, it's our first ETF. I'm not sure if it's the first African-American ETF. I'm not sure about that, so I don't want to misstate anything. For us, it gives us the opportunity to do what we do in a new vehicle. And so it's sponsored by Schwab. They are the people who sell it and underwrite it, et cetera. But as the co-branded manager for the strategy, which is huge for us, our name was Schwab, one of the giant firms out there that we so admire and we love working with. It's great for a firm like Ariel, and it also gives investors another way to work with us, those who want to work with ETFs, which have certainly been popular in recent years.
Exactly. In fact, we have something called the Majestic Fund in the Charlton Center that's a student-run investment portfolio. And now the students have been investing in the ETFs.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, when we talk about kind of new and exciting things that are happening, we must mention for you your appointment in March of 2021 to be the chair of Starbucks Corp, the chair of the board of its directors. So as chair, you became the first Black woman to hold that role. And if I'm correct, you're one of only 2 Black women who serve as board chair of a Fortune 500 company. Now, I've heard you speak of this role, and you have sometimes talked about when you're in a position as being the first. And I believe I heard you say something like first and only, proud and lonely. But you've also said that what you want to be is the first of many. What did you mean by that, and why is that important to you?
Well, first of all, when I do a lot of interviews and people say, congratulations on being the only Black woman who chairs a Fortune 500 company. Ursula Burns chaired Xerox as executive chair. I'm the first Black woman to be an independent chair of a company, but there have only been 2 of us ever of a Fortune 500 company. Previously, I was chair of DreamWorks Animation, but that was not a Fortune 500 company. So this is truly rare air. What I come back with when people say that to me is, how sad is this? This is not something where we should be giving each other high fives. We should be saying, how is this possible? in 2022 that there's one person right now, this one woman, one Black woman. This is crazy. And this shows the level of inequity that exists in our society, because I believe there are a lot of really smart Black women out there who could be chairs of Fortune 500 companies. So that's the first piece of it. My friend Lewis Hamilton, who's the race car driver, and my little brother, he's the one who once said to me, he's a 7-time Formula One champion. He said in an interview, he didn't say it to me, that being the first and only Black anything is a proud and lonely walk. And I was like, wow, that nailed it. Proud and lonely walk. And I thought that was something that was worth holding on to, so people could understand the cognitive dissonance that exists in you when something like that happens. And at the same time, I know in our community, sometimes first and only is really projected as a badge of honor. And because of that, some people don't necessarily want the second or the third. And I said, I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be that. I do want to be the first of many. I don't want it to be lonely. I don't want it to be novel or something where we have to give high fives. I want to see our society evolve in a much, much different way than where we are right now.
So in an effort to do that, we have, as part of the audience, quite a few young females and quite a few mature professionals who do have an interest and aspire to board positions. Can you share with us what the path is? And then also, what do you think is important for attributes for someone to be a good board member?
I get that question a lot. So I would start with the fact that, and I know the interest is out there, and you know, I think it's really important because we are still a long way from having really diverse boards in this country. We've seen some pretty significant improvements of late, but it's off of a small base, and it'll be a long time before Black and brown representation lines up with the overall demographics of our society. So first, I would say, in order to really get noticed, be super good at your job. I tell people, start with being a subject matter expert in whatever you do, because that expertise is what that will allow you to stand out. And so I think when I think about how I got noticed, it was going deep in terms of investment management, knowing the area. And as a result of that, being able to be a financial expert on the board, which is something that became very, very valuable for audit committees after Sarbanes-Oxley was passed many years ago. So that's one, being very, very deep and known for what you do and known for doing it well. The other thing is you have to know people. It's not, you can't apply. There's no posting anywhere that there's a board seat open. They actually won't consider those who try to apply. It really becomes a process of being found. And I told people the way I got found was I worked for nonprofit, and political organizations that ultimately allowed me to interface with lots of leaders. And when I was doing those roles, I worked at them as if my life depended on them, as if they were my full-time jobs. John Rogers, who started Ariel, was the one who always told me, whatever team you're on, Mellody, be the best teammate. And so when I was on those boards, I think that gave people an opportunity to see my energy, my smarts, my ability to get things done, my follow through. And the person where I really stood out, when Bill Bradley ran for president of the United States in the late 90s, I was working on his campaign while working at Ariel. I was doing 2 jobs at once, unpaid for him, but I would work at Ariel from 6 in the morning till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and Bill Bradley 3 in the afternoon till 9 or 10 at night, every day for 2 years. And when he didn't make it to the goal, sadly, he called me one day and he said, I'm going on the board of Starbucks and I'm taking you with me. And it was one of those moments where I was like, what are you talking about? I was, 30 something years old. And he said, you don't know, you've been on the phone so many times with Howard Schultz. I told him you were the hardest working person that I've ever seen. He's seen you in action and he wants to have a conversation. Now, from that conversation to me actually getting on the board took a couple of years, but it was the fact that I didn't even know I was being watched. And so I tell young people and those mid-career who really do aspire to this, and I apologize for such a long answer, just know everything matters. There are people out there who are watching you. You can also drop hints with your CEO. You know, if you're in a company and you're a leader in that company, say to your CEO, to the extent that your friends ask, if there were ever an opportunity, I'd love to have the chance.
Excellent, excellent advice. What you had said though about the tragedy of not having more representation in on boards and in the industry certainly speaks to the challenges that we have in leadership roles and also in governance, if we do so without addressing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're on record as being a fierce proponent of and advocating for gender and racial diversity. And that also is the focus of the Charlton Center, where we understand the underrepresentation of people of color and females in the industry. And we're doing our part to try to bring them in and train them and make them available for those positions. It's been said that diverse leadership correlates with better business performance. For our aspiring business leaders that are in the audience, can you make the business case for diversity?
Oh, sure. I mean, we could spend a whole panel just on that subject, but I'll just give you some of the headlines. The one that I like the most, I'll start with the one that I like the most, is I read this book called The Difference by Scott Page. Scott Page is a professor at the University of Michigan and really, really just super smart. He created the first mathematical formula for diversity. And he talks in his speeches about the power of diversity. And he says, if you're trying to solve a really hard problem, really hard, you want to bring together people of diverse backgrounds. And he says, even diverse intellect, which is something that most people don't think about. And he does it in a Venn diagram that shows small bubbles, big bubbles, and showing all those bubbles together lead to a better outcome. Now, in speeches, he gives this example that I love so much. He talks about when smallpox was ravaging Europe. Now, it's quite relevant to our own experience with the pandemic right now with COVID-19. And he said the greatest scientists of all time were brought together to try to solve for the issue that was killing lots of people, not dissimilar to the efforts that were done to come up with a vaccine for COVID. And it was interesting, the scientists were stumped. They couldn't break through with anything that worked. And at the end of the day, it was the observation of a dairy farmer who noticed that the milk maidens were not getting smallpox. To this day, the smallpox vaccine is a bovine-based vaccine as a result of many people believe the observations of the dairy farmer. So all of those scientists who were trained similarly were thinking the same way, and someone in a completely different area noticed something that led to a breakthrough. Now, he wasn't able to formulate the vaccine, but his observation led to the basis of the vaccine. Now, I always joke, maybe the farmer was Mensa. We'll never know, right? But he was someone that had a different point of view. I believe that is true in business. We are trying to solve really hard problems, and bringing people together with different points of view ultimately leads to better outcomes. It also allows you to understand those diverse customers that you have out there, their needs and interests, and perhaps be able to sell them more of what they might need or want. So this is a win-win. I tell corporations, this is not about a moral obligation. This is enlightened self-interest. And if you really want to be a world-class 21st century company in America today, and you are not diverse, you are committing corporate suicide. I say this all the time. It's not a question of if you will die, it's a question of when. And it could take a very long time, but over the long term, based upon the demographics of our society and the world, it just won't work. Last point. Shonda Rhimes is someone that I really respect, and I heard her talking about this subject, and she said, I don't like the term diversity. She said, I call it normal. She said, because when you walk around most streets in most cities in America, people of all walks of life, all forms of diversity are around you. Gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, etc. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles. You could go on and on. And she says, but so for some reason, when we go into office buildings, the higher up we go, the more homogeneous it becomes, the whiter it becomes, the more male it becomes. And so she said, that's not crying out for diversity. It's just crying out for the normal that's on the street below. And so I really like that example because it's something I think all of us who've been in any major city see and understand.
That is a great example. Let me ask you, in your role as a board member and serving on different boards, is diversity part of kind of the interesting trend that a lot of corporations are focusing on? Or is this something that's just more theoretical than actually being put into place?
I think there's a total sea change going on in society. I call it Civil Rights 3.0. I think this issue is at the feet of corporate America, and corporate America is being forced to respond. And I think it's actually a really good thing. We're seeing a different level of accountability. We're seeing compensation tied to outcomes around these issues. We're seeing these things on goals. And I think it'll ultimately help move the needle over time. Before, for years and years and years, corporate executives would talk about the fact that they were working on diversity. And I say to them, that is the only area in business that you could work on and show no success and still have your job. Mm. You don't work on earnings. You don't work on a product launch date. You don't work on increasing your profitability. If those needles don't move, you don't have your job. But people were continually and consistently saying they were working on diversity. Well, now I think people, the society, not just a generic people, society is asking for more accountability here. You're seeing it with investors like Ariel, investors like Larry Fink. You're seeing it with, the big mutual fund giants and investment companies, where now these questions are there. The endowments and foundations want to know who's managing their money. They want to know a lot more than they used to know who works inside of these organizations. And because now people have to respond, they don't want to come back with empty answers. So I always say to people, use your power for good, no matter who you are. If you're an investor, use your power for good by asking these questions and holding organizations accountable. If you're a board member, use your power for good. If you work inside the company, I could just go on and on. But I think that this accountability issue is ultimately the key. Now, with all that said, I don't want you to think that we're seeing quantum leaps yet. I am still dismayed at times, upset at times, shaking my head, as they say. But we cannot stop pressing. And fortunately, I should say, the rooms that I have been in, I've seen a level of accountability that is reassuring.
I know that your company has developed an accountability framework. Can you share with us the 3 Ps?
Sure. So we do a conference every year called the Black Corporate Directors Conference, which brings together the Fortune 500 Black directors. And in the spirit of diversity in recent years, we've added in Hispanic directors as well. And the goal of that conference is to make sure the civil rights agenda is not left outside of the boardroom door. And so we talk about the 3 Ps: people, purchasing, and philanthropy. And as Black and brown directors, we are asking companies to be held, our directors to hold companies accountable on these issues. I always like to say, math has no opinion. So if it counts, I want you to count it, and I want to see the math. And specifically on people, we want to see the diversity of the organization by ethnicity across the rank and file, all the way up to the board, so that you can't lump everyone together, and no multicultural umbrella where everyone goes together and you say, oh, we've got 40% diverse and a very large number of those people live at the lowest level of the organization in some kind of frontline job. That is not acceptable. We want to see it broken out, again, by title and by ethnicity to really understand underrepresented minorities inside of a company. Then next, we talk about purchasing. We think terms like procurement are last century, and we'd like people to use the term business diversity. So where you buy things, are you inclusive in the vendors that you use? Which interestingly has become more important than not because of COVID. We've all seen what's happened to the supply chain. And many companies are saying we need a more diverse vendor base. This is an opportunity to think about minority business. Because for us to be a true participant in the capitalist system, the economy needs to work for all of us, and we need to be participants in these giant corporate spends that exist out there as businesses. And so we want companies to measure across categories. Do every category where they spend money, break it out by underrepresented minorities. And then lastly, we talk about philanthropy. And I do put that one last because I think in the wake of George Floyd's horrific murder, there were a lot of pledges made around philanthropy. I don't want it to be the tail that wags the dog. Grateful for it, for a lot of civil rights organizations, but it does not become some kind of way of excusing the things that you haven't done to fix your own house. And so as a result of that, I want to make sure there's no virtue signaling on that philanthropy that ultimately in some ways gives people a pass where they are not, again, directly addressing where they spend money and who they hire. I always like to say, show me your people and I will tell you who you are. Show me who you do business with, I will tell you who you are.
One of the things that I think that you have shown a great interest in is financial literacy. And I know our time is getting low, but could you share with us a little about the school that your company has founded and what is making it successful, especially in terms of the need for financial literacy?
Well, first, that's why I was so excited to accept this engagement, because you are directly dealing with financial literacy as well, which is near and dear to me and to Ariel. And a lot of this is an outgrowth of how Ariel was started. John Rogers, who founded our firm when he was 24 years old, it was an outgrowth of his father, who was a Tuskegee Airman and a child of the Depression, giving him stocks every birthday and every Christmas starting when he was 12 years old instead of toys. Dick knows the story very, very well. That childhood hobby became an obsession that became the first minority-owned investment firm and mutual fund company in the country. Very different, obviously, than the experience I told you about myself growing up. John's story really made us believe and understand this idea of financial literacy is key to long-term financial security. And yet, we don't learn about investing in school in America, especially in the high schools where this could meaningfully change someone's life. I always say you can take woodshop or auto today, but not a class on investing. That does not make sense. Who's whittling? Who's cleaning their own carburetor? No one. So we decided, instead of, as we like to say at Ariel, we don't like to admire problems. We like to do something about it. We just stop admiring that problem. And so we said, we're going to actually be bold enough to do something crazy, like start a school. So we started a school as a part of the small school initiatives that existed at the time in Chicago, pre-charter legislation. We're not a charter, we're a small public school. And we have a saving investment curriculum. And we give every first grade class $20,000 real dollars to invest. And that money follows them through their grade school career, with them taking increasing responsibilities for managing it. So we're trying to replicate the John Rogers experience and ultimately infuse this idea of saving and investing and understanding the stock market at a very young age, creating a language just like you would if you were learning a language, and ultimately allowing that study to be infused into households. So now we to learn on alongside of their children, because the children are bringing home homework that they don't know. So it creates a ripple effect in the community that we think ultimately creates more financially literate kids. But ultimately, our goal is to create a financially literate society. Now, we're just one little school, so I can't say that we're cracking the code on the whole world, but we did create a financial literacy curriculum, that we are willing to give to anyone who asks for it for a school.
When you talk about kind of the, not necessarily the trickle down, but how you can work with the children and that will influence their parents, you have spoken often about the inequalities in our system, the wealth gap, and things that you are trying to do or your company is trying to do to address it. Now, here in the College of Business, in addition to the Charlton Center for Responsible Investing, we have the Center for Social Entrepreneurship. And one of the things that this center does is it works within the community to work with small business owners, to educate them, to nurture them, to help promote their businesses and to provide some seed money to them in the form of loans. You now have a new role with Ariel Alternatives, a company that you have co-founded. And I think you are taking an innovative and a different approach to try to help close this wealth gap. Can you share with us briefly what that's all about?
Yes, it's a pretty aggressive and novel idea that has never been done before. But the simple story is we've created an initiative where we're trying to narrow the wealth gap in this country and change the narrative around Black wealth and brown wealth by building sustainable minority businesses, by bringing two things together, capital and customers, having these scaled minority businesses become tier 1 suppliers to Fortune 500 companies. Right now, corporate America, Fortune 500 companies spend about 2% of their spend, $125 billion a year with minority businesses. They state publicly that they would like that number to be 10 to 15%. That means there is a $1 trillion opportunity, but there is a scale challenge. 95% of Black and brown businesses in this country have less than $5 million a year in revenues, which means that even if some of these giant companies wanted to do business with us, we are not big enough. So our goal is to buy middle market businesses, and by virtue of our ownership, our controlling interest in those companies, as well as our installation of at least one of the 3 C-suite executives, CEO, CFO, COO, being a Black or brown leader, a majority minority board, having an exceptionally diverse workforce from the top of the organization to the rank and file, sharing equity when at all possible. Whenever we can grow those companies, expanding into disadvantaged communities where our economic impact could lift the broader community, create 100,000 jobs, we think, over the course of a decade for Black and brown individuals, and hopefully create a cohort of Black and brown leaders that can go and take on any challenge anywhere. We're trying to do that in a way of targeting businesses, middle market businesses between $100 million and $1 billion in size. And by virtue of all of the things I said, they become, my word, minoritized. And so we're trying to really rethink how people think about Black and brown businesses, not just from these seedling small companies, which is super important, but can we go big or go home? And that is what has never been done before. There aren't even enough Black and brown businesses of this size to buy. So we have to go and create them. And so we're going to go and create them by buying them and making them, changing the DNA of the companies to have this diversity be in the DNA.
So hopefully between the two efforts, different paths, but both working to accomplish the same thing. And that is, again, to narrow that gap and help remove some of the disparities. Now, I know we are just about out of time. If I could just indulge you in one final thing. We have a lot of young people who are listening who are interested in advice you might give them as far as, how to get into business or how to be a successful business person. I had seen Evan Carmichael, who had recaptured what he called Mellody Hobson's top 10 rules for success. And I'm not going to go over all 10 of them, but if I could just bring 3 that struck me to your attention. Rule number 3 said, don't make decisions based on money. Now, coming from someone who is a financial expert and a money manager, Can you explain that to us as one of your rules for success?
Yeah, this is a really big one. John Rogers taught me this: make no important decisions based on money. That sounds counterintuitive for someone who's in the investment business. But the reason that that is such an important point is I've seen so many times, and this is what John was teaching me, and he's taught me so much. He was teaching me that people will make a short-term trade, take a short-term gain at the expense of a long-term outcome that is better for them. I see it all the time. Someone leaving a job where they have a lot of upward mobility to take a higher salary somewhere else where they're going to flatline. And so that, making that kind of decision, sometimes it's over not a lot of money. We end up nickel and diming ourselves. If you can stay focused on the long term, it's the better decision. And it could be, I could give you chapter and verse and examples. John used to always tell me, if someone asks, give. It's harder for them to ask for them than for you to give. I know that sometimes people make a decision, you ask them for something, they just say no. And, I was like, that's not the right way to think about the investment you would be making in this relationship, or the opportunity that you have to learn or grow from this experience, whatever it might be. So thinking more broadly, financially, as opposed to just about the moment, is that whole point of not making important decisions based upon money.
Rule number 1, be a fanatic.
This one I think is really important. Anyone that I have had tremendous respect for in business and in life has been a fanatic. I mentioned Lewis Hamilton, the race car driver. He's a fanatic. He's a fanatic about every single thing, precision. One of the books that I love so much, John had me read, was about Vince Lombardi. He had me read a lot of books about coaches. And this book about Vince Lombardi, called When Pride Still Mattered, talked about how Vince Lombardi, who was the coach of the Green Bay Packers, he was obsessed with details. He wanted to make the details and the precision inherent to the football player, so they didn't have to think in the moment. They would actually just know what to do. And so he'd make them do things over and over and over and over and over again until they got imprinted. And I can give you lots of examples of how that happened in my life as well. But that fanaticism, that detail orientation, there is no perfection. But I read this quote that said, in our quest for perfection, we can get excellence. That if you are one of those people, and I know them when I see them, excellence is excellent. You aren't excellent in one thing and half-assed in another. I've never seen it. Excellence is excellence. If you are someone that believes in things being right, you want to right in every way, not in a way that drives people crazy, but in inspiring. And so that fanaticism, I know we have it at Ariel. We try to instill it in our culture, because I think our clients want to know we're fanatics about their hard-earned money. That should make you feel better about us. And I think that's true of everything from the barista at Starbucks who's fanatical about your drink being perfect. All of that lends itself, I think, to better outcomes for the individual. Again, back to a quote I read, no one ever felt bad trying to do their best. Ever. You never regret that in hindsight. Like, wow, I wish I hadn't tried so hard. I've never had that happen to me. And so that fanaticism is trying to do your best at everything.
The final one that I want to ask you about, and thank you, that's excellent advice. Learn from your failures.
Yeah. I fail all the time. I've had some epic fails. And I think it's very, very important to ask yourself in those moments what you should be learning. I find a lot of people rationalize failure. Sometimes things go badly and it is your fault. It's no one else's fault. And we try to make ourselves feel better, when instead of trying to make ourselves feel better, if we hold ourselves 100% accountable, we have the opportunity to then use that failure to our benefit later. I tell people at Ariel, new mistakes. Don't make the same mistake again. New mistakes. In order to make a new mistake and not make the same mistake, you got to understand the mistake you made before in order to make a new mistake. Now, I'm not asking us to make new mistakes. I just don't want us to retread old ground. And the only way I think that you can do that is really being as honest, as intellectually honest as you can about your mistakes. And the way that we do it at Ariel, so when something happens that doesn't go well, we say we want every single person to take 100% of accountability for it. Now that's more
Mm.
accountability to go around, right? But even if it's not my area, it's like, it was my fault for these reasons. I didn't speak up. I didn't work hard to understand what you were doing. I didn't know, maybe it's a stretch, but having that mentality of everyone taking 100% responsibility for the mistake leads to, again, an accountable culture and better outcomes. But more importantly, I think it makes you a better person, a better leader, and I think it makes you more resilient over time.
Well said. I can't believe that we've had you for this time that has flown by. You are such a wealth of wisdom, and the center, on behalf of the center and Dick and the dean, we are so happy that you have found the time to share with us. And I personally am happy to reconnect with you. It's been a long time, but I'm happy. Do you have any final words that you wish to leave us with, Mellody?
I just would, again, thank you so much. As I said, I can't underscore my respect and admiration for the business that Dick built and pushing firms like Ariel to be better and forcing us to learn from our mistakes. The team that he has there that I think has served us very, very well. But also, I just want to say to the people on the phone, one of the Zoom, I always say my last and parting thought is be brave. The world can be a scary place. And if, bravery is not the absence of fear, it's overcoming it with courage. I always ask myself in my moments of fear, like, first of all, I can hear it because my voice will shake ever so slightly that I can hear it. But I tell myself, what is the worst thing that can happen to me? And if I have confidence in my long-term ability, I can overcome the worst thing that can happen to me. So as long as I'm still breathing, so I basically make the worst thing that could happen to me dying, or the death of someone that is really, really close to me. Beyond that, I can get up from most everything else. And the only way I can do that is if I can be brave. And I've been afraid many, many, many times. But it's when I talk in my head and tell myself to be brave that I've been able to accomplish some of my greatest accomplishments. So good luck to all of you, and be brave.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Dick or Joe, would either of you like to have any quick parting words?
Just our deepest gratitude, Mellody. Thank you again.
Very much. Just continue to look for good trouble.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Thank you again.
Thanks
Thank you so much. And thanks to our audience. We certainly appreciate you tuning in.
And for all your kind words.
Thank you very much.